Welcome to this week's recording. Unfortunately for you, Donnie's making another appearance because I just did laundry. But fortunately for you, maybe this will be the last time he is making an appearance as a statement against the active and current president, and next time it'll be against the departing president, because if you're like me, you woke up to a nice little surprise of red states going blue and blue states giving bigger leads go blue. That's just a happy coincidence because they had like 3 flavors at the store. So I was like, blue sounds like a delicious flavor. Blue is a flavor now, if you didn't know that. Anyways, enough talk about politics and colors as flavors. We'll get to Butler, even though color as a flavor is just about as confusing as Butler's idea of, and she talks in terms of like heterosexuality versus homosexuality, that like what we consider the norm or the OG, like heterosexuality, how we point to lesbians or gay people who are appropriating, for lack of a better term. I'm sure there's a better one out there, but this idea that they are miming the original. So like butch lesbians are miming men, and effeminate gay men are miming the roles traditionally associated with women. And Butler talks about that those things are all just a social construct, and I would really I would really agree with her. And I think that like when she talks about drag illuminating those constructs, I think that is what drag does, and it does it aptly. Because if you've ever gone to a drag show, like there are convincing queens out there, and there are even convincing kings where you're like, wait a second, and that shows that like those are constructions if they can visually mimic and just movement wise, and if they can attitude, and if they can encompass like the physical attitude, all of that, if they can do that well to be passing or whatever you want to call it, and not necessarily in a drag show, but they're being hyperbolic about it. But if they can accentuate those features and show how they are created, they're pointing a finger at no straight, like these definers of what are typically associated with heterosexual versus homosexual, like men and women, how, even within straight women who are like more into what like guy stuffs are considered tomboys. Like we have all of these weird classifications to talk about how they're trying to impersonate the OG. And I want to get back to what Butler's talking about, because I feel like the way she is talking about it frames it as a chicken or egg scenario, because she talks about how the original cannot be the original, in that the thing that is trying to mime or not the original has to be named as trying to copy it, to like it's an us versus them sort of scenario. And if this is all getting really confusing to you and it feels like I'm getting lost, it's because I am, and it feels like Butler is also maybe staging her arguments in that sort of manner to show how confusing it is to try to do a chicken or egg scenario. And that's what it came to mind when talking about like the mimic of like trying to mimic the original, and like that sort of thing. It played as a chicken versus egg, or almost dealing with the logical fallacy of not being able to prove which comes first empirically, because we don't know, because as we've talked about, we're kind of steeped in a system of already codified and socially cataloged norms and things that we partake in. And I think that was something we didn't get to talk about, and I'm going to just go off here, is like the historical significance of where those this is okay, like signifiers of what is heteromasculine, like normative things, and how those are good, and what is homosexual and bad, and how those things historically came to be defined, and how like the world shifted. Because we got to talk about it briefly, how prior to the 19th century, I think is what you had said, like homosocial relationships is what we call them, were more the norm. And then you talked about the Far East, and that was engaging in unorthodox or non-normative sexual practices, that sort of an idea. And what was I trying to say here? Just the idea of where that historically comes from. That's what I found fascinating, is that we've just kind of accepted it as a social norm. But as you pointed out, that's a recent development. But I always thought that was fascinating, that we didn't get to explore that as much. But That's my overall take. Is I feel like she's framing it as a logical, uh, not fallacy, but she's phrasing it in that way to show you the logical gymnastics that must occur to be like, nope, this is the original, the good, the straight one is what's good, and then the one that is trying to mimic it is what's bad. I think that she is showing you in that exercise of confusing you and tying you all up that that's sort of the exercise you're doing internally and without even knowing to be like straightness is the norm, and straight guys who do this are the norm, and straight women who do this are the norm. I think that she is exposing just how much contortion goes on to create those constructs and have been done over history by um, showing us that trying to by using the logic she does and the structure she does in her argument to show how like trying to create a which came first scenario and actually trying to break it down in terms of which is being mimetic and which is being the original is really a really hard mental act to actually go through to find one. So I think she's really pointing out there like the societal constructs behind gay being bad, straight being good, men who do this being good, women who do this being good. But if you divert or you cross over, any blending whatsoever is bad. And I think that she does a great job of showing how much gymnastics needs to go into creating an argument like that. I'm gonna stop there because I'm rambling, but that was what I found really fascinating. Not only that, but like Jack Halberstram's, I think was their name. Their essay on the female to male was good in the making of masculinity. I really found that idea interesting. We'll talk about it since I've got plenty of time. The idea that a man's penis should be harder to construct and the man's body should be harder to construct, because I don't think they explicitly talk about it, but most corrective surgery is targeted towards women, and the amount of time that has gone into being able to fix women's bodies is ridiculous compared to men, because as you would think, like if somebody put in the time, we'd come up with a pretty good like built penis pretty quickly. Like, you know, it's a trope all the time. There's songs about it, detachable penis. There's tropes. There's a whole episode of Space Cable 2, I think is what it's called. Yes, it's Rick and Morty. But the whole premise of it revolves around one guy giving away his penis and getting a new one put on that is mechanically superior in every way, shape, or form. But there is something inherently like in him that's like, nope, the real penis is the good penis. Even if you can give me a better one, even if you can give me the Ferrari of penises, the real one is the one I want. The idea there was really fascinating to me, that we don't want to be able to construct an artificial man as easily as we can a woman. And I mean, not that it's the same or related, but look at like sex toy manufacturers. Like they concentrate on making like the penis, but there's not as many fully functioning like people. If you look at sex dolls, there's a lot of like fully functioning real people size women ones, and not as many men. But that's just even a whole thing, is like the man should not be as easy to construct. The sex part thing might not be, because they did narrow in on the one part that people don't want to be able to surgically recreate, and we're like, here you go, we can even make it better. We can make it glittery and spin and do all sorts of things. But I really did find that fascinating, that medically and mainstream wise, we want to pretend, especially with people transitioning, that it is harder to construct what is a real man than it is what is a real woman. Because as Jack points out, there is far more research into what goes on for male to female patients versus female to male. I did find that whole section interesting, and we could go into a whole different subcategory, but I'm going to stop there because these videos are getting long. And have a good week. Thank you.